Ta-da! Hello everyone. Thank you for joining my channel today. This is the Facts on JW channel, and today I'm going to be interviewing another ex-Jehovah's Witness. His name is Tim, and he's going to be sharing his story today. And at the end, I'm going to tell you some of the books that he recommends so you can maybe purchase them on Amazon. So stay tuned and listen for his story. A lot of what he was questioning happened during the pandemic, where I believe a lot of former Jehovah's Witnesses did wake up during the pandemic. He started questioning things, wasn't sure about things, and it all started during the pandemic when we were at home and we didn't have to be scrutinized so much and we weren't going out in field service. So let's listen up to his story. So today we have another interview with Tim. He's an ex-witness, and he's going to tell us his story on basically like why you woke up and or what caused you to wake up, and if you want to just kind of tell us your story.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I was born and raised as one of Joe's witnesses. My dad, I believe, yeah, he was a first generation. His father ended up becoming my grandfather. His father ended up getting into the religion after my dad, so it came later. So him and my mom was also, I believe, a first generation. However, both sides of the family, a lot of them end up becoming coming into the religion, like as I was growing up. So I guess I'm second generation, me and my two younger sisters. And we were raised in it. My dad ended up, I remember my dad being an elder. Mom was a regular pioneer. That's back when you had to put them 90 hours a month in. So service was always going on every Saturday, even at least one Sunday a month. After the meeting, you had to go on service again. But yeah, book studies on Tuesday, Thursday night meetings. That was life. That was our life. And obviously, like, we lived in a bubble. There was no outside relationship friendships. Kids in the neighborhood, we could hang with them if we studied with them first from my book of Bible stories or something. If we have a little study first, then we can play together a little bit, but it wasn't encouraged a lot. And we didn't have a lot of time to even do that because it was always either studying for the next meeting or something. So that was life growing up. I remember being young. I didn't even like it. I remember at times. I remember one time I was at the door with my dad out in field service, and I guess I was running around on the porch or something. Well, anyway, later that day, I got like a real life spanking for that. Uh, so my dad was like one of those old school hardcore witnesses, where you know you're gonna do it. Don't fall asleep during the meeting. If you fall asleep with your hand, he'll knock your elbow, and then you fall. Or you be embarrassed, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I grew up in that era, in the 80s. Witnesses were kind of hard on you. Everything it was by the book, and you really didn't get to enjoy childhood. Everything was about basically compliance and obedience. And so that was growing up, and I believe that led me to like later years rebel hard. I rebelled pretty hard when once I got. Well, let me say first, my parents divorced. So they divorced when I was about 14. They were still in the Kingdom Hall. My dad was an elder and he was helping this new sister out. This new family came to our congregation, and her husband were going through a divorce. The husband was disfellowship, she wasn't. And my dad and a couple other elders were assigned to help her through her, yeah, whatever's going on with her and her husband. And he ended up, she ended up, they ended up getting together. So he left my mom and got with the sister that he was helping and got this fellowship and got reinstated as soon as possible. And he kind of went his way with his wife to a new congregation and near our city we grew up, not too far away, but on the outskirts of it. And so my mom started kind of just doing her own thing. So my mom did her own thing, my sister did their thing, and next thing you know, we're just inactive, but we still believe it's the truth. We just not going. And I started rebelling. I started getting in the streets and stuff, and I started doing like I had a job and everything, but I started doing like petty crimes, and it built up to more serious crimes. And I had a cousin who worked at an auto shop and was telling me about how much money they had. And I could come in there and everybody, they won't say nothing. And you didn't have cameras back then. So I didn't wear a mask or nothing. So like 2 times I went to his place of work. He played along once and I robbed him and I got away with it. And the third time we were somewhere riding around and it was the same type of shop, but in a different place. And I did it again because he knew the guy that worked in there. So I did it again, but this time we got caught. We was in my car. Long story short, I got caught for all three. They added it all together and I got sentenced to 10 years in prison. I was 21 years old. I graduated high school and didn't have no goals after high school. There was nobody's going to tell you to go to college because that's not encouraged. Obviously, no military. You're not doing that. So I was like a leaf in the wind. And so when that time came and I got sentenced, that was rough. But all this is not waking me up about the religion or nothing like that. You know what I mean? I still believe it's the truth. So going to prison, you ain't got nothing else to do. So guess what I do? I get back into Jehovah's Witness materials. I started reading more literature, and this is the first time in my life I really studied the witnesses because I have time to. And they have brothers who come into the prisons and they do the meetings with you. You know, they have the meetings and we do that stuff. We give talks, and I hear the puppies,
No,
and
it's
it's all
annoying.
right. But yeah, they would come in. We'll have the meetings and there, and I even had a cousin come in. He got locked up, and we didn't get to see each other much during childhood because he was doing street stuff. So he was locked up too. But he ended up getting baptized in there in the prison. He got baptized in there, and there were two brothers that were there also that we knew as kids. My mom studied with their mom when we were little. And the two brothers were in prison and they both start going to the meetings again too. Because again, you're in prison, you're like, hey, let's just do it. We ain't got nothing else to do, and this is all we know. So one of the brothers got baptized in there along with my cousin. So we was a tight little strong group in prison in one of the prisons I was in. And I left there and I went to another prison, got my barber license. I used to cut hair anyway, so I got barber license and got out. While I was there, I was again still doing the meetings. And by the way, they never disfellowshipped me when they met with me in prison and was like, you still a brother, but we don't. Basically, they was like, you're already in prison, so we don't feel like we need to disfellowship you if you repent about what you did and stuff. So I never got disfellowshipped or reproved or none of that because you in prison. It's like I guess they didn't want to heap no more punches.
Probably.
But they can't shun me because I'm already anyway. But so yeah, in the other prison I was in where barber school was at, I really was a full-time witness in there. I was on the yard passing out magazines because at that prison too, elders come in, our brothers come in and they have meetings and we gave talks and all that stuff. And so I get out and I'm intentional. I'm going to the Kingdom Hall. But my mom is not going still. She's been inactive for years and I'm living with her. Me going back and starting to give talks and stuff, she is starting to get back into it. Eventually, she got back into it. And as of today, she's like pioneering, probably. She's a full blown witness. We've had conversations that don't go well. But, anyways, yeah, so I get out, and about 2 years after getting out, I meet another witness girl who was raised in it. And I know her parents, like vaguely. I remember them when I was a kid and they knew my mom and that generation her parents and my parents knew each other, so it had common ground there. And she was recently baptized. She didn't get baptized though until she was like 26. And I forgot to mention I got baptized when I was like 14. I was 14 years old when I got baptized. That's when we were like the ideal witness family and everything, and a lot of kids were getting baptized at that time. It was like a trend really, so I got baptized too. And so we got married. We started dating like in January of 2009. We were engaged by the summertime, and then we were married in November of '09. So a little fast, but in hindsight, it was like that was too fast. And nobody kind of like, hey, you just got out of prison a couple years ago. You think you need to maybe, unpack a little bit, maybe counseling, things like that. But that's never encouraged, of course. It's just keep going to service meetings and you'll be fine. So we had turbulence in our first year, and marriage was a lot of good times, but a lot of turbulence too, because she when we got married, she was divorced a couple years divorced. She had been married already once for a couple years. So we both brought baggage into the relationship, and we both really didn't know what we were doing. A lot of witnesses I feel like now get married um, because of I know this is YouTube's, it'd be on there. So for the physical part, let's just say that. That's why I love getting married at a young age because, in witness world, you can't, really, um, when you date somebody, your intention is to marry and you can't do nothing until you get married. So that's what happened there. But what happened around 2018 was significant. I had my son in 2016. But let me back up. Yeah, in 2016, there was a convention that my wife was pregnant. We both went to the convention early that summer because our son was due in July. So we went to a convention. This is the first time I saw the drama on Sunday, like a motion picture. And that was to me, that was my first like little like ting, like little bell, like this is weird. Like growing up in the 80s, we talked against like televangelists and doing motion. That kind of stuff was just like that's not what we do. And it was that drama with I'm like, oh, they got swords out showing blood and stuff. This is like kind of real. And that was my first little like thought of like something was a little weird, but I dismissed it. We had our son, and I forgot to mention also I was disfellowshipped too. I was disfellowshipped. Again, me and my wife had issues, and she went to the elders, and they came to me, and I sat down with them, had a judicial, and I got disfellowship. And the goal my wife wanted for me was to be reinstated by the time our son was born. Because they tell you got 6 months. Once you get this fellowship, you got 6 months. Then you can write a letter. Just make sure you come to the meetings and make sure you're studying for the meetings because they stand on your shoulders sometimes and watch our meetings. You make sure your watchtower is marked. So they uh they reinstated me after 3 letters. I wrote 3 reinstatement letters. The first one got dismissed, the second one dismissed, the third one, they said, all right, you come on back. So I get reinstated, and that changed me. When I got reinstated, I had like no desire to like. I was ready to go right after the meetings. I was reluctant about service. So 2016, I started really just on that decline. I feel like in hindsight of just being an active witness, it started becoming like just duty. Like, oh, okay, I got to shave. Thursday is the meeting. Let me shave right quick. Um, 2018. We moved to Georgia in 2018, and I'm 2017. In 2018, we had our second son. And I found out my dad was a little, he was getting, he had some health issues, concerns. He's like 80 years old. And I see that he was getting sick, but before I didn't know he was even sick. I had actually denied him. I had a grudge against my dad. And our first son, he was visiting and he was living in Texas and he came to Ohio to visit and he wanted to see my son, his grandson, and I didn't want him to see him. I was holding a grudge against him. And 2018, I called him and said, basically I just want to squash it and let's just, I'm going to the hall and stuff and I'm doing okay, but I just wanted to reestablish that relationship with him, meet his grandsons. And so we did that. And 2020, he was getting sicker, I guess. Like my sister said, you probably need to go see dad because he's not doing too good. And he ended up passing. We sat with him until his last breath, but he passed in November 2020. And after he passed, there was a moment I had a couple months later when I was on the road driving to Ohio from Georgia, and I was by myself, and this song came on. Uh, this song came on as like a bit of a spiritual song, and I was thinking on him, and I had like just this feeling and these goosebumps. It's hard to put into words this feeling I had, but something present, something strong was there, or something I don't know. And at the crescendo of the song, at the peak of it, and I'm like tears is rolling. I'm thinking about him, and I turn the corner on 75 North, and there's this big white cross, one of those big crosses like a landmark. And it was like, oh my God, something's going on right now. And it was a moment. And I can't define what the moment was, but after that, a few things happened, and one of them was in a group chat with my wife's family. One of the family members put a link in there about a YouTube link about a guy who was being sued by Watchtower because he was using Kingdom Melodies for a Christmas song. And so I hit on that and I'm looking at it and like, wow, okay, that's weird. Well, YouTube has algorithms. And I had before looked on YouTube before something came up about Watchtower and their money being tied to like weapon companies like Lockheed and stuff like that and stocks. And the guy had documents, but I remember cutting it off. I didn't watch the whole video because I was like, oh, I can't be looking at this. You know what I mean? Can't watch that. Well, when I saw the video about the guy with the Christmas music using Kingdom Melodies, the next video, I forgot what the next video was, but that led me down the rabbit hole. Let's just say that. I watched another video, and then even though I was nervous, like scared to death to do it, I kept watching videos. But behind those videos, I was in disbelief. Like this, no, this stuff, not all of this. And then the big one was the Australia Royal Commission. Once I saw that, I was like, oh, snap. Okay. So I didn't tell my wife any of this. I just kept looking up stuff. And now I'm looking up documents. I'm online looking Royal Commission. You know what I mean? I'm not looking at apostate material. I'm looking for my own self now, my own, sources. And I found a book called How to Escape Jehovah's Witnesses. And in that book, well, before that, the book was the Jehovah's Witnesses and the United Nations. That's what it was. When I read that book, Jehovah's Witnesses, the United Nations, and I seen all the documents and everything about their affiliation as an NGO with them after condemning other religions for being NGO, it was like, oh, you hypocrites. You know what I mean? Like you tearing down the Catholics and everybody else, but you was just doing it. And the only reason you withdrew was because an article came out and busted you, caught you red-handed. So that right there was like that was the final one. I printed off all the letters and stuff. And then I got this book called How to Escape Jehovah's Witnesses. I didn't realize there's like a lot of books on that subject. And I read that book and it was about strategies about like how to leave the witnesses because you can't just come out and tell them everything. And I remember reading that book and I didn't follow any of their suggestions. I didn't follow any of it. I just one day my wife, uh, I was sneaking, smoking weed. I was sneaking it, and I would do a little bit and try to cover up the smell. And one day she smelled something like you smoke weed because I had before, and I said, you know what? Yeah, yeah. And you know what else? I'm done with the drum. Like I compared it to like the slave ships when they got that drummer who just beating that drum and they got to roll to the beat of the drum. And I feel like my whole life has been I've been rowing to this drum beat, and I said I'm done with that drum, and I'm tired of it. And I found out so much information to confirm how I feel. Well, that was the wrong approach, um, because of course, it didn't go good after that. Being married, um, and waking up I know now that if I could do it over, I wouldn't bring that approach that, that bombarding, that bombing you with all this information because, the indoctrination too strong. Of course, Jehovah's Witnesses believe the governing body, they're the sole channel to God. That's it. There's no other channel. And so, if you questioning them, you questioning God in effect. So that was the wrong approach. Um, and we have two small children at this time. This is 2021. This is in 2021 when I completely woke up and I had done research for months. It was months of me looking stuff up and what it was, I get it now. It was just building up in me. It was just building up, building up, building up, and I didn't tell nobody because you can't. And so, excuse me. So I told her all this information. I started sending her all this information via the phone, documents and things like that about the child, CSA going on, the Royal Commission. And for me, that was the number one issue. That was the biggest one because I have two small boys. And it's like, what? they've been all this time covering up and paying lawsuits out to cover up, um, all the CSA going on all around the world. And, so marriage after 2021 has been increasingly difficult because it's just rough. It's hard when one spouse, me in particular, knows the truth about this religion and sees the hypocrisy and all the things they tell you. And now I see the manipulation behind the wording in the magazines and the broadcast. It's like, wow, they just really want blind obedience. Even articles that say, even if it doesn't make sense, you still need to obey any instructions you receive, even if it's not logical. And like that's not reasonable to say that to people. You know what I mean? Just to blindly follow. So it's hard for, and I'll speak on just being a man. Um, a man wants to lead his wife and his family. That's just the role of a man. And when you feel like your wife, the one that's closest to you, you should be able to, like, this is the biggest thing in your life. And all I wanted was some time to sit down and let's look over some information I found. Not from apostates, but from Watchtower publications. Let's look at their own words and line it up. But I understand that they're scared to do that because you know, they're scared of what they'll find. And they really, it's almost like you know, I don't want to, hear it, I don't want to see it. And I want to be blissfully happy. You know what I mean? And they have a lot of relationships, they have their family ties. And I get it. I get all that. I bombarded my wife with a lot of information, and in hindsight, that's not what to do. That book I had, How to Escape Jehovah's Witnesses, gave you strategies if you're going to drop tidbits or not. And I didn't follow any of it. What it was, emotions took over. Emotions took over, and it was like, you're my wife. Listen to me. You know what I mean? Like you're supposed to hear me out. This is huge. I wouldn't be just coming to you like I don't like the fact that I found this. I feel betrayed. I'm devastated. You know what I mean? I feel like my whole life I've been told something and trusted something that now I feel like they not feel like I know that they've been lying. They've been lying to me. So the betrayal part was hard to take. But again, I did it wrong. And so it just became difficult. Sundays would come and, I want us to hang out as a family and go do something, but she's going to the meeting. And so with two little boys, now I don't want them to go. And she wants to take them. So we had to kind of figure out, you know, sometimes they can go, but sometimes I did say it. They can go sometimes, but they're not going to go every week. You know what I mean? Like let's have some balance because you can't be arbitrary with what you believe, and I can't be with what I believe. So let's just hey, some Sundays they stay with me, some Sundays they go with you. Some Thursdays they go with you because I'm working anyway. So, I'm sure you get them out then. And Saturdays I work. So they getting out field service on Saturdays too.
Mhm.
And I've talked to them on levels that they can understand as kids. Why I don't go. Because my son asked me, Dad, why don't you go to quinoa no more? And I told him. And I was kind of blunt about it. I said, son, your dad found out that a lot of things that's being taught just aren't true. And, I believe in God. I believe in God. I believe there's a higher power for sure. But I don't believe what I've been taught from this religion. So daddy don't agree with it no more.
And did your kids go to the memorial?
They went yesterday. They went to the last one with their mom. Yeah, they went, and it's funny whenever because right now we're not together. Right now we're in kind of in limbo, separated. But whenever the kids come to me, or even when I was at the house, they would always say, "Dad." I said, "Do you guys like going to the?" I would ask them, like, "Be honest with me. You like going to the meetings?" And they always say, "No, it's so boring." And it is boring. Telling the truth because as a kid, I was bored. I couldn't. It was hard to stay awake. I remember going to get water a lot just to stay awake, but. I just talk to them and let them, um, I share with them what I found, and again on a level that they can understand. They're not going to understand 1914 doctrines and you know and all that kind of stuff. They're not going to get that generation that stuff. They're not going to get. But I remember my wife didn't really tell anybody, as far as I know, and so I just became inactive. I stopped going, and this was after COVID, so we were all it was all Zoom meetings. And I remember one meeting. I said, you know what? Let me jump on a Zoom one Sunday. My wife wasn't home, or I think she was either she might have been sleeping or she was at the meeting because she worked third shift, so she might have been sleeping. Whatever it was, I got on the Zoom one day and I had let my beard grow. And I got on the Zoom on the meeting, and my picture was on. My kids was there too a little bit, and they was even a little surprised. And I didn't stay on for the whole meeting. I remember logging off early, but the next morning, Monday morning, I got a phone call from an elder who was a substitute circuit overseer. So he's kind of like high up, I guess you can say, in the ranks. Excuse me. And he called me and say he didn't say like how I was doing. The first thing he said was, I noticed yeah, you grew your beard out. You got your beard. And I was like, yeah, yeah, I like it. I said I like it. I mean a lot of compliments on it. And it's funny, all the compliments came from non-witnesses, by the way. When I grew my beard out, every compliment was from non-witnesses. Even my family saw my beard, they act like they didn't see it. Hey Tim, how you doing? But they act like it wasn't there. Like, oh, we don't see that. And so he was showing me something from one of the Watchtower magazines about beards and customs and things like that. And the only response I said was, well, where in the Bible, though, does it say a man can't have a beard? Like, isn't the Bible the authority? And he never answered me. He replied with a question about, do I believe in the governing body? Do I follow the leadership of the governing body? And again, this brings up that thing, that point again, that they equate the governing body to God. Like, if you don't listen to them, you're not following God. But I kept trying to emphasize, but the Bible, again, the Bible, isn't that what the governing body uses? Like, isn't that the final say? And we left that phone call kind of like, he kind of just, I forgot how it ended, but it was kind of ended a little dry. Basically, like you're not gonna just tell me something, and this is in the middle of me finding stuff out too. And I didn't say nothing to him about the things I found out, but that was in the middle of me finding that out. So I wasn't gonna let him just try to coerce me. I just kept using the Bible as the authority. I mean, that's what you preach, and it's kind of odd too because that same brother he wore like foundation makeup. I got he wears makeup. It was the reason I know that my wife told me because we were out in service on the summer. We in Georgia, and in the summertime it's hot out in service. And we were out in service one day, and I noticed the edges around his face or something was just the shade was different. And I said something. I was like, "He got no makeup." She's like, "Shh." Don't say that." She's like, "Don't say that too loud." Said maybe he has something covering up. I'm like, I don't know about that. Makeup on. But that's kind of ironic that a man is calling another man about his beard that God gave him but he wearing makeup. You know what I mean? Just so that was
It's funny.
to me
And
it's just hilarious.
now they allow beards since
And that's the funny
last year,
part.
right?
Yeah, now they allow beards. And guess what? I ain't heard from them. I haven't heard from them since the beard rule is allowed. You know what I mean? Um, it's just funny how they just flip flop and the doctrines and stuff. So um, when I was waking up, the first person besides my wife I said something to was my father-in-law. I'm a barber, and I used to cut his hair. And I mentioned something to him about, he said, I ain't seen you at the meetings. Like, I could tell, like, what's going on. He could tell something was different about me. I got my beard. I'm not going to the meetings. And I said, yeah, I told him I found some things out that's really disturbing me about some of the origins, about the religion and stuff. And I didn't bring up Royal Commission. I didn't bring up United Nations. I just told him, and he just immediately was like, oh, I didn't think you would be one to defer. The word he used defer. And I was like, I found out some things that's the truth about some origins about the history of it. And I don't remember particularly what it was, but it was something about the origins, like going back to the Russell days and Rutherford days and some of the things that they said or did that they didn't sit well. And that was his last haircut. He didn't come back. And in the congregation we all attended together, there were about 4 or 5 other brothers I used to cut and they just disappeared after that conversation with my father-in-law. So it's easy to figure out. He went back and witnesses are big for that. They this is a gossiping community, and he went back and I'm sure told them because nobody never came back for a haircut. The one brother who became an elder who I used to cut did call me a couple times, And I didn't answer the phone call because I kind of knew what it was. And one day I decided to answer, and I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And he wanted to, "Hey, how you doing? We ain't seen you in a while." And I was like, "I haven't seen you either. I used to cut your hair." I didn't say that, but I was like, "Yeah, I ain't seen you either." And he's like, "Yeah, we just, we miss you, and we just, want you to come back and stuff." And that's when I started asking him a few questions, or really not questions, but I made a few statements about um, my stance on my beliefs. Kind of felt like, I don't feel like I need religion to be close to God. That was kind of how I felt. I didn't need um, a man-made organization on top of that to be close to God. I don't, agree with a lot of things, and that's kind of where I stood. And of course, that conversation ended kind of quickly, but they never reached back out to me or asked to meet with me or nothing like that. I just basically became inactive. But I'm sure the rumor is out there because rumors will go out about you if you talk against it a little bit. So I had a few invites from a couple brothers, like, "Hey man, we get together and stuff like that." And I was just kind of declined. And so I could tell they were wanting to reach out to me, but they really didn't know how. And so they kind of basically, in the end, they just left me alone. So I faded, and by 2022 now, I'm completely like out of it. I'm not going no more, and I'm still again, I'm on YouTube a lot, and
You're
I am
not
really
disfellowshipped. You're not
hmm?
disfellowshipped. You're not
I was
disfellowshipped.
not this fellowship. No, never got this fellowship. I'm just basically what they call inactive. And I'm sure as time goes on, since I started doing YouTube and stuff, I'm sure word will go around. I'm sure at some point, hey, they can if they want to make an announcement or something. I don't care, but I have considered. I'm still weighing it if I want to turn in a letter. Like if I want to officially just be like, I want to take my name away from your books or whatever you got going on, your publisher cards or whatever. I've considered it, but I haven't made that decision yet.
Does your
Uh,
mother speak to you?
my mother speaks to me. My mother wants to talk to me more, but it's hard for us to have conversations. It's hard, and she's a full blown witness. She knows how I feel. Because my mom, I've told her everything I felt. But I will give my mom credit. She um, even though she knows like my talk is apostate talk, she won't shun me. She'll take my calls. She'll reach out, say, "I love you, son," this and that. But it's just everything seems so superficial now because it's just not the same. You know what I mean? It's just not the same. She's a diehard witness. You know what I mean? And every time we have a conversation, usually something comes up where she's trying to witness to me, and I have to try to cut her off. Like, "Mom, I've heard all that before. You know, you know, telling me that son, the end is almost here. Is this and that. I said, "Mom, the end has been here since 1879. The end has been here. So it's hard to have a relationship with somebody who's a full blown witness, even family members, because you know how they think of you. You know what I mean? You know how they feel about you and think of you because they're taught that, you are basically you're gonna die at Armageddon. You're not in Jehovah's favor and you don't have a connection to God. And it's funny because I feel like I am more spiritual and more conscious than I've ever been in my life after waking up. It's like I can see through the BS now of certain groups and things like that. And now I just kind of like I'm at a point now where I'll visit a church just to see how they do things. I don't plan on joining, but I'm just open to see how people do things. I'm not dogmatic about anything. I'm continuing to study and read um, books, older books, just study. And when you do that, I feel like it gives you a broader perspective on the whole picture of religion and world religions and even this particular religion, Jehovah's Witness. Um,
You're using
you look at it now.
you're using your critical thinking skills now, right?
That's it. I never had them. I never had them. No, never had critical thinking skills. And it's funny too because certain things that happened should have woken me up, like the drama with the movie. They doing a movie production, or oh, I tell you what, I forgot to mention that I was appointed as a ministerial servant too while we were married. Around 2013, I believe, I was appointed as a ministerial servant, and this was big for me. When I got out of prison, I committed some fornication sins before I got married, but I kept them secret. And because I was in prison, I'm a man, and I got with some girls I knew before I was locked up, and things happen, but I didn't want to lose again that fear of losing your family, being disfellowship. I didn't want that to happen, so I kept it secret. Well, Jehovah's Witnesses are taught that when you are appointed as a minister or servant or an elder or any kind of appointment, Holy Spirit does it. So when I got the call that you've been appointed as a servant, I'm like, whoa, how? Like Holy Spirit should have knew that I was Holy Spirit. Where was the Holy Spirit should have known that? No, he ain't. He committed some sins when he got out of prison. He didn't tell nobody about. And it was like, what? And so later when I woke up, I was like, ain't no Holy Spirit. It was just some men just talking. You know what I mean? It's a business, and these are made up of corporations, and so now the mind is like constructing this stuff and figuring it out. And I tell you what, one of the stages of leaving that anger phase, I was in that for a long time, and it still can come up a little bit. And I would get so angry at like even at myself sometimes for not seeing things earlier. Um, why didn't I see that when they appointed me as a servant? Holy Spirit, Holy Spirit is supposed to make the appointment, but it didn't.
Yeah, I also was stuck in the anger phase for a while, and I can see that, with you having children, you probably are concerned about maybe what they're going to believe later on, huh?
Big time, big time. And that's why I feel like I have to speak out. The reason I'm speaking, honestly, if my wife, right, would have looked at some stuff with me and concluded that this was not the truth and, that kind of stuff, and we were just going to be together and kind of just fade away or do what we're going to do, but we're going to be a partner together and raise our kids away from it,
Mhm.
I would not be on YouTube. I wouldn't be on here talking about it probably. But because that's the main reason, but because I have kids, I feel like now I have a responsibility to them. And not now to them, but to other people in the situation that might be married with children. And, to me, that's the hardest part because the kids, you know what I mean? They're the ones who kind of feel the effects of it. And no, I don't want them to be a witness when they grow up. I don't tell them I don't want them to be. I just want them to learn facts now that will
Yeah.
prevent them from even considering it. Like no way.
Yeah, and maybe with time you can keep sharing what your knowledge of what you have learned, and maybe hopefully they will be able to listen to you and use their own brain, and not be 100% brainwashed. And even I don't know if your wife is like willing to listen to little tidbits. Like, could you explain to her, like, hey, 1914 doesn't add up, and here's why? But she just won't listen.
No, I've tried many times to ask her, can we sit down and look at some things? She says, I'm not going to sit down and go through a long thing. I said, but this is your life you're talking about. Like this is serious. Um, if you believe that this is the truth, then scrutiny should be able, you should be able, it should be able to stand up to scrutiny. And so she won't. She won't sit down. She doesn't want me to send her any more information about anything. That was a while ago. Don't send her. She didn't want any more information, documents, things like that. So I just stopped.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say, in that anger phase, I do, I speak bad about the religion. And when I say the religion, the leaders. I talk bad about the leaders because I believe there's some big scam artists and it's a big pyramid. And so I talk about them unapologetically because what they're doing to me is terrible. And I believe that a lot of witnesses know that stuff ain't right, but they'll use the excuse like, but Jehovah's cleaning up. That's what she said before. Jehovah's cleaning things up.
Or a big one, leave it in Jehovah's hands, right?
Oh, that one right there. Yeah, leave it in Jehovah's hands. Man,
Yes.
the big conversation we had, one of the biggest was about blood transfusions. I use our son as a scenario that if he had an accident and
Oh,
just put yourself in that moment where he's in the hospital and God forbid anything happened, but he lost a lot of blood and the doctor is saying we need him a decision right now. He needs a blood transfusion to save his life. And when I pose that question, are you gonna let your son die? You know what I mean? She never could answer it, and I could see her fill up with a lot of emotion because I know you love your son. You know what I mean? And she's talking about alternative medicine and all. I said, no, 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 no. The scenario is in an emergency situation. His life is at stake. We need a decision right now. And of course I told her, I said, but don't worry, I'm gonna let the doctor know that he can have a blood transfusion. Like doctors are gonna side with the parent who want to save the kid's life. I mean, that's just the bottom line. So that scenario, I know it rocked her brain a little bit. That cognitive dissonance kicked in. I know it was there, but I believe her and a lot of witnesses, them family ties, their friends, and the fear of losing that, they'll stay in.
That's true.
They'll stay in.
Hey, you know something interesting about the blood transfusion that I thought about? Like, so they used to not allow organ transplant either, and
That's
they
right.
said it was cannibalism. And then they changed their mind and said organ transplant was okay, as long as there were no blood transfusions. So if I can give you an organ and save your life, why can't I give you blood to save your life? What's the difference? I don't know.
Yeah,
I thought it's a good analogy to maybe
that's a great point.
make people question, but it's
That's a
hard.
great point.
Yeah, it's hard to make them question though, because like you say, they're just kind of stuck in this, like they got their blinders on and they're not going to listen to anything except whatever Watchtower says.
Whatever Watchtower says. And along with that organ transplant thing, I told her before, I said, imagine this. Before they said it's okay to have an organ transplant, imagine the people that died before that. What
Mhm.
do you tell the people that listen to the governing body and didn't have an organ transplant and they died because they couldn't get one? And then they changed the rule and said you can get one. How would that make you feel losing a loved one based on their rules? It's like, I mean, come on. It's oh man, it fills me up sometimes to think like the insanity of,
Just
but
a
it's like
lack
a
of
it's like a
common sense here.
yeah, it's like a common sense. It's like one guy on YouTube talks about it's like the Twilight Zone. You know what I mean? It's like they're hypnotized. You just can't see. Yeah,
Love
yeah, yeah.
it. The
It's
Twilight
like, come
Zone
on.
of the Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It is something. It is something. So now I've been it's hard too, them phases. I didn't know there were phases. And I haven't done therapy, but I am going to do therapy with someone who was referred from another witness, ex-witness. And this is somebody who used to be a witness and they specialize in therapy for people who left the religion. Because I never acknowledged it, but growing up with the trauma of parents' divorce in the religion, the trauma of just growing up in the religion,
Yeah.
and in particular, me going to prison and all this stuff, and then getting married and having kids, it has to be I need to kind of get an outlet somewhere. You know what I mean? So self-development has been my goal. But at the same time, I recognize that there's a need for therapy. And I think a lot of people who leave the religion should consider, because it's a healing process, because you've been damaged, you've been hurt, and you need to heal. And you also need to recognize that, you can't let it, a lot of people will. I mean, let's face it, a lot of people have taken their lives because this religion is that damaging. And so to heal, you have to acknowledge that it happened, but not letting it control you for the rest of your life. And writing that chapter off. Like that was a lot of chapters maybe, but I got new chapters to write. So,
Yeah,
um,
a good way to look at it. And I think that's counseling is good for pretty much every ex, well, not just ex Jehovah's Witness, anybody in a controlling religious group, right?
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time. And share with us, what is the name of your YouTube channel?
The YouTube channel is Freed, with the D, Freed from Cult Life.
Freed from Cult Life. Okay, so
Yeah, Freed from Cult Life.
good. So everyone can check that out, and I'll make sure and leave a link in there for
Okay.
people can check out your channel too and see your
Yeah.
story.
Thank you. And I appreciate you doing this, creating a platform to get the word out more too, because I believe that there's a huge audience of ex-witnesses, of course, but I believe there are a lot of witnesses. I think that's a big audience too. They're watching. They're
Mm.
watching.
Yeah, I've had
Yeah.
some witnesses come on and comment on my channel. So I would think that if they must be curious,
hmm
you know,
hmm
curious because why else would they come on and comment on XJW sites?
That means the algorithm is getting to them. They're watching stuff. Yeah, yeah,
True.
yeah, yeah. But no, thank you. I appreciate it. What you're doing is great work. Keep it up.
You too. Thank you so much. And we'll be checking out your channel as well.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye. So it was great to hear Tim's story. And he mentioned that he had started reading some books. And I'm going to share with you a couple of books that he did read. One was called False Jehovah's Witness and Watchtower Religions by D.E. Turnbow. And then the next one is called Physically In, Mentally Out, Navigating Your Exit from Watchtower by Bethany Ledger. And then there's another one called How to Leave Jehovah's Witnesses with No Harm to Yourself and to Your Family, Your Exit Manual by Dan Berger. And so these are a couple of books that you might find a good read, especially those who might want to wake their families up, but they want to be careful. Another book he also mentioned, or he didn't mention, well, sort of, he mentioned about the UN. So he said one of the books, it's called Jehovah's Witnesses in the United Nations by Tammy Dickerson. So that might be a good one as well. So I will put in the link and a link below in the description for you to check out these books on Amazon if you want to purchase one and see if any of those might be helpful to you or your family to either help wake someone up or also just helping you being able to recover from the control of this religion. And people don't realize outside of the JW world, they don't realize how harmful this religion is to people. And people who are in it don't realize how harmful it is to them. All they know is that they feel anxiety, they feel worthless, and that they just have to keep trudging along despite the end not coming. They believe it's coming. It was supposed to have come in 1914, and then it was supposed to be 1925, and then it was supposed to be 1975. There was supposedly like a 1954 thing, then 1975, stay alive till 75, and here we are, 2025. What are they going to say next? How many years can you continue the lies? Thanks again for watching. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, and share this video. And let me know in the comments below what else you would like to for me to create videos about. And we will look forward to seeing you again next time.